You recognize, ma'am, for 3 minutes. And just let the clerk reflect that Vice Mayor Weinroth and myself are present for matters by the public.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor. My name is Karen Yeho. I live in 9174 Chianti Court, Boynton Beach, Florida, 33472. Today, I want to address about the court orders. Since Commissioner going to have a budget hearing and clerk of court, the budget is from here. So you have some kind of saying about the running of the court. And from my side, I pay like a lot of money for real estate tax. May not be for rich people, but I pay like $65,000 real estate tax. So I do address. This one here is a court order. I inherit a house from my parents. My parents deceased in 2016 and 2017. This court order came out with a cut and paste court orders. That it's, I saw this court order and I went to the clerk of court. I said, what is this? What kind of court order is this? This appearing, it's cut and paste court order. Judge's signature, same thing, the date. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is this. Is it possible to have the budget that I can tell it's a real court order from the judge? That means it's raised, have it raised, having it certified, say this is a real court order. Anybody can be fooled by this court order. And in order for me to go through the process, I had to file appeal to the 4DCA. Say, this is court order, does not make sense. I'm the owner of the property. My parents will say, I own the property. The Louis Hensey Inc. Trust say, I own the property. Why is this court order came out? So I know the budget is coming. So if clerk of court say, we require some more money for each judge to have the stamp, raise stamp, and certify or whatever, let me know. I'm the public. I need to know this is a real court order that I can follow. I cannot follow a court order that's a fake. This is obviously, this is by the law firm, and they can e-file. They can cut and paste judge's signature and onto the court order that they wanted and e-file it, and nobody checked until I check. So that's my comment, and I hope that we take this seriously because all our financial assets, properties, all depends on the court order. And I do respect judges' hard work, but they cannot be everywhere, every time, every day. Okay?
Very good. Thank you, Karen, for your comments. And I'm not going to give you legal advice, but if you receive the order from the clerk of the courts on their docket, then that most likely is a court order. When you say that lawyers can file orders, they can't. They can file proposed orders with the judicial assistant, but they're not capable of filing orders that are actually signed by the judge on the docket. So it sounds like you know a little bit or a decent amount about the clerk of the courts, and we will take your comments into consideration when we address the budget.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you all very much.
Yes, ma'am. Drew Martin, you recognize, sir, for 3 minutes. We also have Commissioner McKinley and Commissioner Weiss present for matters by the public. Thank you.
Hello, Drew Martin. I'm here on behalf of the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. And the Sierra Club is spending a lot of time on the Ag Reserve right now because there's a lot of attempts being made to, file these developer-initiated text amendments. And we're concerned about losing the Ag Reserve to too much development just because there's a threshold where it becomes difficult to farm if you allow more and more development. We're very, unhappy with the decision to allow Lake Worth Drainage District an additional 278 or 80 acres because it's going to take out of a very good conservation land. They're going to trade that for something that's viable, and that land's really not viable. And, I went to the planning board last Friday when it came up again, which of course it passed because they they obviously didn't want to contradict the decision of the commissioners. But one of the concerns I have is, what is the guarantee that they're not going to move forward? Simply their word? Because that, if the county wasn't able to challenge them before, what if they decide to come back? Now they say, we're not going to come back. They passed a resolution of their board saying they were not going to come back. But that's simply a resolution of their board. A new board could pass a different resolution and then come back and open this up again. So, I mean, the reason I got from the commissioners who voted in favor of this was they voted in favor of this because they thought this was going to close the door to any additional asks from the Lake Worth Drainage District. Now, the other question I have is, how do we know that this money is going to be properly spent by the Lake Worth Drainage District? I mean, the commission's basically giving them money because that they wouldn't have normally had. Now, they have an assessment. They could have raised the money through an assessment. But the question I have, is this really just an opportunity for them to build a reservoir to sell water to Broward County? Because that's been an issue that's been ongoing for some time. And should the Palm Beach County be funding that sort of a reservoir? Because that's really not benefiting Palm Beach County. The other question is, if Lake Worth Drainage District is able to sell that land to GL Homes, and GL Homes is going to build more homes out there, is that going to put more risk on drainage? Because now you have more homes going in there that have to be drained. So the argument that Lake Worth Drainage District needed that money to help build up their infrastructure, in a sense, at the same time, they're increasing the stress on their infrastructure by, allowing GL Homes to build more homes that they have to then provide flood protection. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Drew. Just 1 second. Commissioner Weiss, you recognize, sir.
Hi, Mr. Martin. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your comments. I will just remind you from the meeting where we move forward with the Lake Worth Drainage District's issue. Staff was given direction to bring back the comp plan changes that would close up the loophole that they found in the comp plan that allowed them to put their proposal forward. As to it relates to how they're going to spend the money, I understand that they passed a resolution as to how that money was going to be utilized, but of course, can't guarantee what they're doing. They're a separate body with their own abilities, and they answer to their own stakeholders, if you will. But I can assure you that our planning folks are going to be moving forward and bringing back changes to comp plan to close that down.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr. Martin. Commissioner McKinley, you recognize as well.
Yes, I just thank you for your comments, Mr. Martin. I'm not sure, but on page 54 of the agenda, item 6A2, we approved an extension of the lease agreement with Peril Family Farms earlier today, keeping in mind the promises that we made with the residents of Palm Beach County on that bond, that these acres would be held in agricultural production or agricultural related use. And this one is being done to run concurrently with the McMurrian lease, which is another commitment the county made when the Water Management District was looking to sell that parcel. Instead of selling it with them, we bought them out. So two really good things that we've done in the Ag Reserve, keeping those promises. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Also, Commissioner Marino is present for matters by the public. We'll have Heather Sherm. You recognize, ma'am, for 3 minutes, and then we'll close with Dwight Mattingly.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Ms. Baker. So this is an interesting perspective for me, being that I have a lot more insight into your work being a county employee and usually sitting on that side. Today, I didn't come down for the item because I was actually doing the briefs so that we can inform the public about all your actions. So the reason I'm here is because I am feeling your pain. I am a 3-month recently elected president of my HOA. I own a condo in Lantana. And after my other board members talked me off the ledge, I decided to dig in. And when I sat and watched that condo collapse on TV that day, my heart was sinking. And thankfully, although we're not ahead of the game, we had started addressing this issue, so my phone didn't start blowing up with, what are we gonna do? But it's, interesting, no matter, we're not a high-rise, but we are a waterfront community. And ironically, that morning, I met with an engineer who had bid on Surfside 3 different times. And his conclusion was they just didn't want to spend the money. And again, I understand that we still don't know what caused it, but it's definitely something we can't ignore. But I also recognize that I feel like Palm Beach County has a good building code, and we do a great job of inspecting that building code. And I'm not sucking up because I'm a county employee. I'll tell you my honest opinions. So I really just wanted to commend you. I appreciate your support. I'm going to be looking and watching closely at the support you're going to fight for the boards, because it is a non-paid, thankless job. I can attest to that. And I'm enjoying the learning experience. I've learned more about building and plumbing and anything about buildings, that drywall, anything you can imagine, than I ever thought I would know. Also, in my recent sleepless nights with Melissa, I know you can relate, because I see your tweets at 2 in the morning, and things, you're just up dealing with things. And last night I actually listened to a meeting with engineers, building managers, attorneys, and it was really insightful. So I'm going to email that to you. Might be something you'd like to share with your constituents in your newsletters. And I just wanted to thank you, because I think you're doing a great job, and I'm just so glad. I'm glad in a sense, because now I probably won't get any opposition to spending well over $1 million to restore a building, and it's the same age as the Champlain Tower. So I just wanted to thank you and appreciate you bringing this.
Thank you, Heather. I don't know if there's any other comments by members of the board, but I'll tell you that we're so lucky to be able to self-govern. The history of the world is fraught with dictatorships and autocracies, and the United States of America is a shining example of democracy. But the irony in some of that is that because we're so lucky and because we feel so safe in our form of government, a lot of people don't want to participate in that self-governance part, and that includes from dog catcher to county commissioner to HOA member to President of the United States. So for you to step up, and I live in an HOA, and I appreciate people wanting to take on and self-govern. It's a thankless job, but we don't do it for the thanks or the salary. So thank you for what you do as a private citizen in your community and for as a county employee. Vice Mayor Weinroth?
Again, I don't know, condolences or congratulations in that spot. I started my political career as a president of an HOA, and I know it's thankless, and I know that constantly you're going to be pulled in several different directions. But I think, if anything, you heard in our conversation today, we have a great deal of compassion for the homeowners and the condo associations as we're going to try and fashion a way of making people safer without pushing them to a place where they can't afford to live where they are. So, I think that we're going to try and have that balance there. And again, congratulations and enjoy your office.
It's only a year that I have to commit, so I'm happy about that. And if I might just make one last comment, I meant to mention the state responsibility. Being a peninsula state, I'm really looking forward to the legislature putting in some statewide, even if it's guidelines, mandates, it's got to happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for your comments here today. We'll close public comment with 3 minutes from Dwight, who we'll hear from later in the agenda as well, possibly.
Good afternoon. On the morning of May 26, 2021, the maintenance employees of Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, represented by Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 265, came to work like any other morning, expecting to put in a day of work providing safe public transportation vehicles to run in the San Jose area, then go home to their families at the end of the day. 8 of those employees never got to pick up a tool that day to begin their job. Unfortunately, their life was taken by one of their co-workers in a senseless mass shooting. This Sunday, July 18th, Amalgamated Transit Union will be holding a memorial service in San Jose, California, commemorating the lives of those that were lost. The day after this happened, I called Executive Director Clinton Forbes and urged him to take immediate action and steps to conduct a threat assessment of our facility at Palmtran, and invited him or a representative of his staff to meet with our employees and discuss this tragedy. He assured me that he would, and this past week, our maintenance manager, James Cribbs, met with the employees in the maintenance department and in an overall meeting, and at the end of the meeting, discussed this briefly about how if they see something, they should say something, and other things pertinent to the issue. In a letter dated July 5th, 2021, Amalgamated Transit Union International President John Costa sent to all transit agencies, including Palmtran, a letter stating the following: the ATU is calling on all transit agencies and providers to develop emergency preparedness programs that address the full scope of emergencies, including active shooter situations. Such programs must involve the development of emergency action plans, training of transit workers, and periodic refreshers, and drills to ensure that workers can execute those plans under challenging circumstances. We have certain enhanced security measures in place, and we have all been exposed to the online active shooter training. However, I urge you to do an assessment on what we may be missing and how we can make sure we have done all we can to bring protection and make sure this tragedy never happens here. I want to thank Executive Director Forbes, Assistant Administrator Todd Von Laren, Administrator Baker, and for the board's direction during the past year and a half to provide better protection to our transit employees during the pandemic when we were going through this health crisis. But I also want to urge you to please take serious that we do need an assessment of our buildings to make it safer for these employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight. And I can't say too much, but I can tell you that this issue is very much on the front of our agenda as a government, and progress is being made. All right, that concludes matters by the public. I'll read one into the record since we only have one. My name is Michelle. I'm a resident of 30 years. I'll be meeting at this afternoon. I know you all have a full day ahead, so I'll keep my appeal brief. I am seeking help to ban the sale of noisy fireworks. It is a consensus that it would be a welcome change to our community. Please take a minute to watch this video below. Thank you for all you do. Respectfully, Michelle Morse, District 4. So that's been emailed to the board. Commissioner Weiss, you recognize, sir.
Yeah, I responded to that email and advised Michelle that 2 years ago, the legislature took action, unsurprisingly, preempting local governments from banning the sale of fireworks for 4th of July and New Year's Eve, and also advised that there was a local bill introduced this past session specifically allowing a portion of Wellington that where the agricultural area or the equestrian area is to have a ban on fireworks. She responded with her thanks and said that she, based on that information, she was not going to be coming today.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Weiss, for your proactivity on responding to that constituent. That concludes matters by the public. We'll be in recess as a board, and then we will reconvene promptly at 2:30 to take up the regular agenda. Call the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners back to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner McKinley.
Here.
Commissioner, oh my God, I'm sorry. Mayor Kerner.
Here.
Commissioner Weiss.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weinroth. And Commissioner Marino.
Here.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have a quorum with 5 county commissioners present in the chamber. We're on agenda item 6H1 on the regular agenda. Office of Financial Management and Budget. The county administrator is recognized.
Mayor, is this on? Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, we're here today to give you provide a presentation to you regarding ARPA and the funds. We've come up with some very broad activity categories for you to consider and to give us input if that is the direction that you want to go in. So I'm going to start out by talking about the CARES funds, because I think it's important to remind the board of the excellent work and direction you gave us on the allocation of those funds and how they were expended, and the overall intent was to push the CARES dollars out to the community across the board. So it did not matter with the programs that we came up with, whether you lived in the municipality or the unincorporated area. If you met the criteria, you could participate in our particular programs. The CARES dollars, if you'll recall, we did receive 261 million. We added an additional 3 million in interest, and so we ended up with roughly about 263 million overall to allocate. Our total expenses that we have of today is 251,412,000, and then we've committed an additional 10 million, so a total of 261.43 million have been expended and encumbered. We have a balance of almost $1.4 million that we have and will be able to expend within some of these categories that you have allowed us to allocate the funding. And we have until December 31st of this year to expend those particular funds. We expended roughly 53 million in general government expenses. That included PPEs, BCC COVID-19 expenses, teleworking equipment in order to continue to provide services to the public when we first entered into the COVID experience. We also provided countywide signage, public education messaging. We provided COVID-19 expenses for our other constitutional officers, such as masks, hand sanitizers, phones, partitions, et cetera. And we worked very, very closely with the supervisor of elections, because last year was an election year and there were a number of elections being happening. And so we wanted to ensure people that they could go into those areas and vote and be safe. So that worked out well for our community. We also reimbursed municipalities for eligible expenses up to a tune of 2.76 million in that particular area. We, in addition, for the emergency food distribution, we averaged roughly about 100,000 to 150,000 pounds per week delivery to our Palm Beach County Food Bank and partnering agencies, exceeding more than 5 million pounds of food distributed throughout the county's communities. We also work directly with Feed the Hungry, which is a super pantry for distribution to smaller pantries. Feeding program, we average roughly about 50,000 pounds per week, exceeding 1 million pounds during that activation period. We also work with Boca Helping Hands, which is a super pantry as well, and they average roughly 1,000 pounds per week of protein. And we work directly with the Glaze and assisted them with their Glaze initiative in providing shelf-stable items during the distribution. Further, during the emergency food, we also contracted with the school district in the amount of $2.3 million to support drive-through feeding sites by purchasing fresh produce, site support items, including 3 mobile refrigeration units for the school district to allow them to do the grab and go. We helped support meal sites and also supported the transition to safely provide on-site learning with the school district. Contracts and allocations in the amount of $5.6 million also supported our grab and go home delivered meals for our seniors. And then we also had a prepaid card program, which took contracted amount was $14 million, and we served roughly 13,000 cards, and those cards supported the families that we needed to get through. Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, we partnered with and purchased formula in the amount of $64,000 to meet the increased need to feed 0 to 4-year-old children through their program. We also teamed Glades Food, Water, and Diaper Distribution. We allocated and expended $460,000. Buchanan Provisions, freshly prepared meals for the community. We actually closed the restaurant and provide the meals to the resident. That was $189,000. And I can go on with all of the detail, but I wanted to give you just a little more detail than what you actually had on the spreadsheet. We just pulled out some nuggets to make sure that we all had an idea or remembered the great work that staff and under the direction of this board actually provided during a very trying time that we made it through. This particular slide shows where the bulk of the dollars, the CARES dollars, went. It was Restart Business we expended of that amount, 30.3%. General government was 21%. Emergency food was 14.5%. And then we went from there, family housing assistance, individual assistance, and then our non-congregate shelter facility, as well as the hotels that we partnered with in order to place people that needed shelter or needed to be isolated and not necessarily having to come out of their pockets, which a lot of them were challenged because they were homeless or did not work. And then we also did the broadband enhancements. This board, our previous board, Board of County Commissioners, allocated additional ad valorem dollars early on to begin the broadband process. The CARES dollars then allowed us to extend it further, and as you'll hear later on, we're asking you for additional dollars to wrap up those particular programs. So I wanted to just remind us all of the work that has been done with the CARES dollars. Then we move on to ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act. The state of Florida received $8.8 billion. Palm Beach County received roughly about $290 million, and we estimate that our municipalities, whether they received it direct or will be receiving it through the state, will total roughly about $206 million of ARPA funds. The ARPA funds, again, our funds that came directly to us. We only received 50% at this point, and then a year from now, we'll receive another 50%. And that's totaling $290 million. We, in addition, received emergency rental and utility assistance through ARPA, which was $48.9 million. We also received $45 million between CARES and ARPA, which we refer to as stimulus or CRISI funding, and that was $45 million. We pushed $15 million of that $45 million already out the door to assist people with rents, catching them up, and also utilities. And we'll be ready to extend the permit and send out the remaining. Palm Tran received directly ARPA, $56 million. Airports we're anticipating will receive $23.5. And then home ARPA, which is outside of our $290 million, we anticipate receiving $8 million. That will help us with the home buyer assistance. We're waiting on regulations. Those regulations have not come out as of yet. Potential pass-through grants from the state. Section 2911 is additional funding for LIHEAP. and the state will receive roughly about 80.7 million. Palm Beach County, we anticipate, will receive roughly 2 million of that 80.7 million. Section 2912 is the Water Utility Assistance Program. The state received roughly about 42.5, and we're waiting on our allocation amount from the state. Sources of guidance, we're just getting to you. We were waiting on some additional rules from Treasury. We have interim final rules that was issued on May 17th, so we started working on this. We're still waiting on the final rules, so we'll tweak as we receive those particular rules and regulations. There are 4 categories associated with the ARPA funds. Category A, anything expended under this category will need to respond to COVID-19 or its negative economic impact. Category B, premium pay. Category C, revenue loss. And Category D deals with water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And then we also included in your package a listing of all of Category A, the eligible expenses, the associated details, and then also share it with you in this packet what we cannot use the funds for in Category A. We cannot use the funds to pay interest or principal on any outstanding debt instrument, including short-term revenue or tax anticipation notes or other debt service cost. In addition, any general infrastructure project, unless the project responded to a specific pandemic public health need or a specific negative economic impact, like those described above with affordable housing in our qualified tracts. Again, Category B was premium pay. This county moved forward before this rule came out, when our staff was working face-to-face with the public during the COVID, height of COVID. We did grant compensatory time up to a week, I think, for our staff prior to this. So they received some compensation already. Further, I think the sheriff also provided some premium pay for his staff. So I think we've covered our premium pay. That is not one of the recommendations that we put in this particular pocket because we addressed it already. Category C, revenue loss. And we'll get more in detail into it in the budget, but our property values continue to grow at a reasonable rate. However, other revenues decreased. State share revenue, along with some of our fines and fees, didn't come in, and so there was a significant impact to us as far as the revenue loss is concerned. It's general, and they allow us to utilize those funds for general government services in broad terms, and it's not limited to COVID-19 responses. So that's the Category C, which allows us a little more flexibility in what we can reimburse or extend those funds. The Treasury actually gave us the methodology in which to calculate revenue loss. And so it started with a base year of 2019. We looked at, and if you look at the chart, this is not Palm Beach County. We will show you Palm Beach County a little later, but this was their methodology, where you look at 2019 compared to December of 20, you see the deficit, the loss. In addition, it allowed us to will allow you to utilize a 4% growth factor or whatever your growth factor will be. It also allows you to take into consideration all of your revenues across the board, with the exception of transit, utilities. And so we were able to back that out, and we came up with what we see as our revenue loss. And this reflects what we've come up with our revenue loss across all funds, with the exception of the transit, the utilities, And we did not include airport in this either because we felt airport was part of transit. So over the years, we believe since 19, we lost a total estimated, which includes 8% average growth from 19 till now of $107 million. Based on this formula, that is the amount of revenue loss this board could allocate if that need was there. So I do want to point out during actual 20, that is the calendar year of 20, but all the other years in this chart reflects the fiscal year. So that was the anomaly in that. Again, expenditures under this category, we have the broadest latitude to expend the funds. The others are specific, and you have to follow the guidelines. There are reporting requirements, and we will be following the rules set out by Treasury. Category D, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. We'll continue to monitor Treasury until they give us the final rules in which we have to abide, but it allows us to invest in water, sewer, or broadband. We will be looking to partner with others in order to leverage our dollars and bring in the biggest benefit for our community. We're going to be looking at clean water state revolving funds. We can utilize these dollars for wastewater treatment plants, decentralized wastewater treatment systems, stormwater systems, control of non-point sources of pollution. I think one of our biggest challenges here is stormwater, as well as our septic tanks, and those are projects that we will be looking at. And these are a couple of more examples of what we can utilize the Category D funds. Keep going. Keep going. Broadband infrastructure, we're going to focus a lot on broadband so that we can address the underserved and the unserved households in Palm Beach County. And that is, we'll be bringing back programs. If you approve us moving forward with these categories, we'll bring back more detail at another board meeting. Go ahead. You can go ahead. I do want to point out that the cost incurred period for these funds is from March 3rd, 2021 to December 31st, 2024, based on obligation date, contract date, purchase order date, etc. And then the final payment date on any obligation is December 31st, 2026. So this time frame is going to dictate what type of projects we can put in here. It will also dictate the difficulty in the project, because with federal funds, there are requirements that you pay $15 an hour at a minimum, along with some other reporting criteria. So we will keep all of that in mind, and when we bring the programs back, we'll be able to lay that information out for you. Again, there will be a reporting period. Our reporting period begins, we've got a report date due as of August 31st, 2021, and that's to show them any expenditures we've had through July 31st of 2021. After that, there will be quarterly reports 30 days after, and we will adhere to the annual recovery plan performance report for jurisdictions over 250,000 residents are due August 31st, again, 2021. We bring before you consideration of the allocation of the $290 million in very broad categories. We know that this is the first round that we're coming before you, and as we move forward, just as we did with CARES dollars, when we identify other eligible needs that we did not consider. We'll bring the schedule back to you, any changes. Nothing is cast in concrete right now, and we also have proposed allocations for them. Behavioral health, which we all know is a major factor, and COVID exacerbated it, that situation. We're looking at allocating roughly about $10 million. That's for infrastructure improvements to our behavioral health system. Broadband cybersecurity infrastructure, we're looking at roughly about $43 million. That not only includes pushing the broadband into the community, but it also will allow us to utilize and bring our system up to standards. General government expenses, we're still looking at PPEs, marketing. I think this is going to be key in educating and encouraging our 18 to 40-year-olds especially to consider taking the vaccine, along with other factors, and keeping everyone informed. I think that Dr. Alonzo's report out this morning tells us that we're not out of the woods. We still need to remain diligent about practicing safety. Housing, we've allocated roughly about $60 million. That will include retention of existing affordable workforce housing, as well as adding to the supply. Again, this will all be based upon whether we can get all of these projects in and out of the door. We do have scattered sites. We will continue to work intentionally with our nonprofits as well as for-profit builders, along with our housing authority as well. So if we can collaborate with them on various projects, we will do so. Hunger relief infrastructure, this is pantry infrastructure, is to extend the life and food the life of food and other related projects. Refrigerator equipment, we know that some of our pantries will need some assistance in adding infrastructure, and that does include our Glades initiative as well, to make sure that we've got the equipment in place. Testing, vaccine, and that's $10 million. Testing, vaccine, and antibodies, we've plugged about $3 million in there because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but this is an eligible expense, and we want to ensure everyone in our community will be able to receive treatment as well as the vaccine. Infrastructure, county buildings. What we did, we learned a lot during COVID, so we're looking at our HVAC system. We, in all of our county buildings, will need to make some modifications to them, to also include a connection for our EOC and our 4 Points building, so that staff working during disasters, during terrible weather, will be safe, and we can still do our job between Alpha and Bravo shift, and then other applicable projects as we continue to move forward. Our other, and that's $35.3 million. The infrastructure for water, environmental, and resiliency, that's to help with our water, our sewer, stormwater, and other eligible resiliency projects, including moving our parks off of septic onto sewer where it is cost feasible. We'll look at that, and that's roughly about $75 million that we've allocated in that particular category. We're also looking at infrastructure for culture. We know that we've got some of our cultural organizations that are expanding or building new. We want to be able to partner with them for the infrastructure projects. So we've allocated roughly about $4 million in that particular category. And then revenue replacement, I am asking the board's consideration of allocating $46.4 million to the general fund to help balance our budget, so that we don't have to cut so deep into our base budget and other pressing items that we need to put into the budget. So that concludes my recommendation to you regarding the ARPA funds at this time.
All right, thank you very much for the detailed presentation on 6H1. We can take some questions now. We'll start with Commissioner McKinley and go to Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Baker, under your hunger relief infrastructure, you have hydroponics. written on that? Was there something specific there, or is that just an idea?
It's just an idea. We know that there are areas as farming land continues to shrink, that other methods are going to be needed in order to continue to farm and grow here in Palm Beach County. And so this was an idea brought forward, so we put it in. And all of these are examples. It's not to just nail it down to just what's in here today.
Okay. They're actually doing, I don't know if they're still doing it, maybe Commissioner Weiss knows since he's on the Juvenile Justice Board, or Commissioner Sachs, one of you. They were actually doing a hydroponics training program with the youth at the detention center. And from what I understand, back then, it was, when it first came out, it was one of the more popular programs for the kids to get involved with, so I like seeing that. Behavioral health, does that include substance use services as well?
We haven't put all of the boxes in these slots. We're working very closely with the healthcare district on the behavioral health pattern, and we'll be bringing back to you a plan, and it very well may include some of these fundings. So I would say behavioral health would include substance use, mental health, et cetera, but we'll nail those particular items down and bring it back to the board with the details.
Okay, because our overdose numbers have skyrocketed, so, and I hate to throw a curveball at you, but that's the benefit of participating in these national conferences, is
Yeah,
going
you're not
and
allowed to
learning.
go to any more conferences.
You go and you learn, right? One of the items, one of the categories that we were told by our National Association CEO, Matt Chase, in a briefing, was to clear backlogs in criminal justice systems. For instance, the state can actually use ARPA dollars to clear dockets in the court system. That doesn't fall in our jurisdiction because we don't hire those employees. But I mentioned earlier today the initiative that Miami-Dade County Commissioner Sally Hayman is leading on the rape kit backlog. And I understand that these dollars can be used to clear that backlog. And of course, that's done by the Sheriff's Office, his crime lab. In the same breath, I don't know if we've created or have some sort of backlog in autopsies, if our medical examiner needs any assistance in clearing some of her backlog. If we could look into that and see if there's a way, I can't imagine it's a huge dollar amount. We might be able to pluck a couple of dollars from each of these categories, but I would like to explore that.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Commissioner Weiss, you recognize, sir.
Yeah, as not being able to attend future conferences, apparently, of what we learn. I did want to share with you, while we were at NACO conference, I did have an opportunity, and as did all of the attendees, to interact with folks from the Treasury Department. And my understanding is that the final comments for the rulemaking is they must be submitted by this Friday. And if there are any things that we need to submit on, or asking for changes or whatever, they're encouraging everybody to get them in, of course. And that leads me to my last point, which is just, I know there were a number of questions raised throughout the conference with Treasury on a number of items, and so I expect that we're going to see some changes coming. In some of these, the specifics on some of these categories, and as I was involved with what was going on, of course, on the broadband side and water, and hearing the comments about that. So,
Well, you were until you weren't allowed to go to any more conferences.
well, apparently, according to our county administrator, I'm no longer allowed to attend
So you
because I
might as well
learned too
resign.
much.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mayor.
Commissioner Sachs.
I
you
will be going to
recognize.
every conference from now on.
Thank you, Mayor. What's this about conferences out of the county? Anyways, I want to thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for, it's not easy to have done what you have done, and thank you to your staff as well. I know they worked very hard, making sure that every T was crossed and all these little categories. And thank you for meeting with me and discussing some of these issues. There was one issue that I wanted to come back with you on, and that was with regard to broadband. And as we all know, many of our students many, if not most of the students, had to learn from home using whatever internet service they have. Under that category of broadband enhancements, and I know you discussed it a little bit a few minutes ago, have we looked at whether, when they return to school, whether all their schools will have capability for high-speed internet? Is that something that we have looked into, and maybe we could shift some of the monies into there?
All the schools do have high-speed internet. They did say that they're working on maybe it works inside the schools, and if you step outside the schools, because they've been hardened for shelters, that it's not great. So the school district is working on that, but there is high-speed internet in every school.
Good. I'd much rather have it inside the school than have the kids play with their,
Right.
I'm sure they're learning math at the playground, but whatever it is, it's good to have it inside, and thank you for looking into that. I appreciate it. And one other item was the item of cultural organizations, and if there was any discussion further that we could have with regard to a museum for the diaspora, for the Holocaust. And I'd like to be able to discuss that further with y'all as we progress.
Okay.
But thank you, and thank you for the work you did on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacks. Commissioner Moreno, you recognized.
Thank you, and you all are probably tired of my questions. It has been, and thank you all for your patience. I know that we've been going over the budget and over and over and over again, but the $290 million that you have planned here, I know that we talked about this yesterday and that there really wasn't a complete schedule of projects already. This is just a idea making its way through. But I am, and I don't want to assume because you know what happens when you assume, but these dollars that you have designated, I would guess that if the projects don't have the need for that much money, you will be able to move them. This is not set in stone. I just want everybody to know that we have the ability to move this around. So if we want to do something for the Holocaust Museum that might not be in cultural, we can do that, or other water issues that we might have, water storage, buying land for water storage and whatnot. So I just wanted to make sure that the 290 wasn't etched in stone. However, it has to be encumbered by 2024 and spent by 2026, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And really, the board will have the ability to amend those amounts, I would suspect. I want to join my colleagues, and particularly Commissioner Sacks, in commending you on this initial vision for our, but I find that the 44.7 or 6 million for our budget is very much needed, and just as the community has suffered revenue losses and other struggles, so has our revenue collections and our ability to keep our government both efficient and effective, and maintain employment as well, which is a very important category in the health of an overall community. The only comment I would offer before we get to public comment is, today in particular, we learned the resistance of COVID-19 and the way it manifests itself and mutates. And really, communities only as resistant to COVID-19 as they are amenable to getting vaccinated. And I suspect that this will be a continuing theme for some time. So I would just be cognizant of, you had testing, antibodies, and vaccination. I would include in other COVID mitigation strategies as part of that larger picture, and just be sensitive to that number may have to go up over time depending on people's resistance or unwillingness to get vaccinated, really, which is unfortunate. All right, so I only have one public comment card, and Dwight Mattingly was kind enough to put sort of a flow chart as to whether he wants to speak or not, and it looks like the flow chart is pointing to no. So we have no public comment at this point in time, unless I'm missing anybody, and this is on agenda item 6H1. So barring further comments by members of the board, a motion is in order. Vice Mayor Weinroth has moved forward agenda item 6H1, A and B, which is receive and file and provide direction as published in the agenda. Is it seconded by Commissioner Weiss? Any further comments by members of the board? All in favor? All opposed? 6H1, A and B passes 6-0. Very good. That moves us to 6H2, Office of Financial Management and Budget, regarding authorization to submit a proposed not-to-exceed millage rate. Madam Administrator, you're recognized.
The purpose of the item today is for the board to set the maximum millage rate, not necessarily approve a budget, but to set the maximum millage rate. But I will walk you through our proposed budget. We did attach Exhibit 1 as well as Exhibit 2. Exhibit 1 reflects what the budget would have looked like without the $46.4 million of ARPA funds for revenue replacement, and Exhibit 2 reflects the $46.4 being a part of it. Wasn't sure where we were going, so we brought both packets to the board. So I will move forward the proposed millage rates and public hearing dates. Our current countywide millage rate is 4.7815. The library is 0.5491. Fire Rescue MSTU is 3.4581. Jupiter Fire Rescue is 1.7880, and the aggregate millage rate is 6.5836. The countywide voted debt is 0.0334, and the library voted debt is 0.333. Our public hearing dates have been set. Our first public hearing is September 9th at 5:05 p.m. Our second public hearing is September 20th at 5:05 p.m.
Just a clarification, your library voted debt is 0.0333 for the record.
Okay. 0.0333, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the general fund revenue impacts, and this goes back to the revenue loss that ARPA will allow us to utilize. And roughly and I'm only looking at the general fund revenue, not the entire, all of the funds. But starting in 2019, it was a banner year, as we know, and then COVID hit in 2020. So we lost a total of roughly about $29 million that year. That includes a growth factor of 2%. Then when we compared it to the next year, it wasn't as bad for 2021, but we still lost a total of $23 million over 19, and that does include another 2% growth factor. And then in 2022, the loss was at $22 million with the growth factor. Totaling over those 3 years, we lost a total of $74 million in revenue loss. When we utilize the methodology the Treasury allowed us, we actually, across all funds, lost $107 million. And so for the general fund, it totaled roughly about $66 million, and we're asking you to allow us to utilize the 46.4. The next sheet reflects because our property values did well during this period. COVID did not stymie our property taxes. However, it did impact all of our other revenues. And so I've given you a sample of the larger revenue amounts that we lost. There are some other smaller amounts, and they add up, but these are the larger. The state revenue sharing, our half-cent sales tax, franchise fees, electricity, communication service tax, utility service tax, gas taxes, and our parks and recreation, because we shut them down. And they generate a substantial amount of revenue to help offset their ad valorem impact. When I came to you on June 15th, the budget was balanced. but it included roughly about $62 million of ARPA funds. The board directed me to go back and to bring back a budget that did not have the ARPA funds in. And so I'm bringing that back to you at this time. So when you go back to the June 15th revised budget to take out ARPA, it reflects that the fund balance would decrease by $36 million. BCC departments would increase roughly about 4.7%. PBSO would increase by 5%. SOE would increase by 28.24%. And then our capital program would only increase about $2 million, which then created a $46.4 million deficit. So in order to keep the budget whole, and to balance it without it, we looked at the potential reductions across the board. We looked at the fact that we received an additional $7.2 million in property taxes between June and July. Normally, we receive anywhere from 3 to 4. So this year was a really good year. In addition, as a result of property values and taxes increasing, we had to allocate an additional $796,000 to our CRAs. Then we looked at departmental cuts. We're looking at the potential of cutting our BCC department's base budgets by $7.9 million, eliminating all supplemental requests, implementing a BCC hiring freeze, and those are for departments that are directly under Avalorum. It did not include freezing positions for the building, any of our enterprise funds, just the Avalorum impacted departments. We're also looking at cutting $7.7 million in reserves, and then not adding any cost of living increase for our behavioral health FAA type programs in here. The judicial system did ask for one IT position. I did not add any supplementals for the BCC side, so I cut all supplementals for our constitutional officers as well. And then the PBSO would be looking at roughly about a $17 million cut. With those reductions, I would be able to bring you a balanced budget with no ARPA funds involved at all. It also will impact our fund balance. And anytime we start to impact our fund balance and not properly grow our capital plan, that will have a negative impact with the rating agencies. They're always looking for those type of items when they're looking to continue your AAA bond rating. So if the board decides to allocate the $46.4 million, I would be able to restore all of those cuts, including the few supplementals. We knew this was going to be a tight year, so I did ask my departments to only submit what they absolutely needed, and they adhered to that. So I want to publicly thank them for that. So we did not have a lot of supplementals on the county side, but I'd like to restore those. If you allowed us to utilize the 46.4 ARPA revenue replacement funds, and plus the taxes that we received from June 1 to July 1st, the $7.2 million, it will allow us to increase our fund balance by $10 million. It will allow us to fully fund our departments, and that includes our the salary compensation, which I have to tell you, it is getting very difficult to attract and maintain staffing. And it's not just Palm Beach County, it is throughout the nation for government, as well as the private sector. So we're all looking to hire some of the same people, and I need to remain competitive as far as salaries are concerned. So we are making those adjustments. It will also restore PBSO to its full capacity. The SOE we would restore, and that $4.4 million, the bulk of that is dealing with the state legislature's change in policy and how they handle mail-outs. All of their documents will need to be modified. So that's a lot of printing. And in addition, we will be working with her on ensuring that her IT system is separated totally from ours, and it's just a system all to itself. So all of that is an increase. So I would be able to balance the budget and not have such a negative impact on the services that we're providing. Employees, I just want to give you a feel of the fact that we're not growing employees, but the population for the county continues to escalate and demands on services continue to escalate. And that first chart is just your BCC employees in the general fund for the most part. The second one does include fire rescue, libraries, and other aid departments that are under the Board of County Commissioners' purview. What I did not include in here, and I'm awaiting your direction, is the ID cards that came up, and we put it on the list for the board to give us direction on whether you wanted to allocate dollars for the ID cards.
Are you looking for direction today or in September?
No, I'm looking for directions today, so that if that is your direction, we'll be able to roll it into the budget and won't have to make this adjustment for the September 1st meeting. I'm sorry, for the first public hearing in September.
Okay. Commissioner Sacks, then Vice Mayor Weinroth.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And I've had this discussion with a number of people, and one is with the organization that has been really pushing this aggressively for some time. And I understand that they really want to help those who cannot, pursuant to Florida law, get a Florida driver's license. And I have received a letter today stating from a Florida Justice League, I believe. I'm not aware of this group. Having been an attorney in Florida for almost 40 years, I have not heard of this group. However, they state that these ID cards, for which we would spend, I believe, $75,000, is for people who are felons or who are visiting and cannot get a Florida ID card. And it is my understanding, and I could be wrong, however, it is my understanding of the law that the only people who cannot get a Florida driver's license are those who are undocumented. That is, they are not legally within the country, and/or those who do not qualify under, American citizens who do not qualify under Florida law because of some driving incidents that occurred beforehand. Therefore, I think that the only group who should issue driver's licenses and/or ID cards that are accepted by law enforcement is our Division of Driver's Licenses. It's a state agency. It receives federal funding, and it is financed by the state of Florida, financed by all of us. It is under Ann Gannon's jurisdiction here, constitutional officer, and that is the one agency that is the only one allowed to issue state-issued identification cards or state-issued driver's licenses. If there is an agency that is pro bono or an NCO that would like to issue ID cards, then I think they should be able to. But they should be able to do whatever they want. It's a private entity. But for county taxpayers to pay for an entity, a group, an agency that I'm not aware of, to issue, that I am not aware of, in that I do not know their legal basis for issuing a state or county ID cards, I'm opposed to it. Because I think that it does two things. It hurts law enforcement, because law enforcement cannot legally recognize any type of ID card that is not issued legally by Ann Gannon's office. And secondly, it may, in that it doesn't comply with state laws, but secondly, it may hurt the bearer of this ID card to think that this person has a valid state of Florida ID card, which they don't. So at this point, and I know we're pressed for time, Ms. Baker, in terms of getting it done, I oppose allowing paying any private entity to file, to produce, process ID cards at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs, and I certainly want to get to Commissioner Weiss as directly as possible, as definitely as a leader on this issue, but I wanted to clarify, and I don't mean any offense whatsoever, but certainly DHSMV is the primary agency that issues driver's licenses. As you've noted, we are talking about identification cards as well, and I'm just speaking from my experience as a police officer. The goal is certainly, we don't have the authority to issue driver's licenses, but when residents of our county, whether here lawfully or not, commit any type of misdemeanor infraction, and you know this as a former prosecutor like myself, particularly driving without a license, or other minor crimes like possession of marijuana, things of that nature. One of the issues that comes up for a law enforcement officer to make a custodial arrest or not versus issuing a notice to appear in court on that misdemeanor charge is whether there are sufficient ties to the community. And whether you agree with it or not you, Commissioner Sachs, but whether the public agrees with having undocumented workers here or not, the reality is that they are here, and they do have ties and sufficient ties to our community to be released on their own recognizance for a minor violation, but for having an ID card that identifies them through some vetted process. And so I think the overarching goal is certainly not to try to overstep our authority in issuing driver's licenses, but to give the option to law enforcement to issue notice to appear, thereby continuing our stated goal of reducing our jail population for minor infractions, while at the same time, and I'll let Commissioner Weiss speak to this because he's much more informed on it, but concerns about ongoing COVID issues with hesitancy or inability to get tested or vaccinated due to a lack of verified ID. So there's a litany of issues. I'm glad that we're bringing it up and getting some adjudication on the issue once and for all for this budget. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Weiss and then to Vice Mayor Weinroth.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your comments, Commissioner Sachs, but let me address a few of the points you brought up. These IDs are issued by the Legal Aid Society, and I'm sure you're well aware who they are and what they do. So they're the ones that do this work. I think the letter you received was from, I think, the Criminal Justice Association, or Palm Beach County Criminal Justice Association. West Palm Beach City Commissioner Christy Fox is the executive director of that nonprofit. It's been around for a number of years, and they support a variety of programs. In fact, they have made a donation to the Legal Aid Society to support these community IDs, as has the City of West Palm Beach, the City of Lake Worth Beach, and I also believe Riviera Beach has also contributed in the past to these IDs. The crux of the issue, well, before I do that, additionally, who pays for this? Where do these tax dollars come from? Whether you're legal here, I shouldn't say legal, whether you're undocumented here, whether you're visiting here, if you're renting or own property, you're paying somebody to pay for the property taxes on that property. So everybody who lives in this county and lives in on a premise somehow is contributing to the overall taxes that we collect. Whether they pay them directly or not, if they pay them through their landlord, they're still contributing and they're taxpayers. The use of these cards, though, are not to allow somebody to drive a car or do anything that they could not legally do. The problem people have in this country, and whether you could be an ex-felon and maybe not today, if you try and get ID, you have to come up with a real ID program. And if you haven't gone through that, let me tell you, There are a number of hoops you must jump through, and for some people, it's incredibly difficult. You could be a senior citizen, you could be a returning citizen, or you may be somebody who is here undocumented, or maybe even a visitor that would require a local ID in order to get, as was mentioned earlier, to participate with some of the programs that we have for getting vaccinated or tested. In order to get your utilities turned on, you need to produce an identification. In order to open a bank account, you need to produce an identification. And unfortunately, one of the issues we have, and I can speak specifically to my district and parts of Mac Bernard's district, is we have folks that do not have access to banks. People know who they are because of the way they look, and they become victims of crime because it's understood that they're going to be walking around with cash. And this program has been utilized for a number of years here in Palm Beach County. I think it's reasonable for us to make this support. It's $75,000, although a lot of money to many people in our community. In our overall budget, it's a relatively small amount of money, and it's going to make a big difference in people's lives. It costs approximately $20 per ID to be issued. So this would do the math, and it's about 35,000, 37,000 people it might be able to help. So that I would really like to see us move forward on it, and I do appreciate your comments. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Commissioner Sacks in response, and we'll get to Vice Mayor Weinroth.
Thank you so much. And I just think the world of you, Commissioner Weiss, and I know that your heart goes out to so many of the people in our community who are undocumented. As a former prosecutor, but I have also been a criminal defense attorney, and I represent many, many undocumented folks who are here, whether they're visiting and overstayed visas or working, doesn't make any difference. They are here, and we take care of them as Americans, as we should. They're welcome in any hospital, any emergency room. And the IDs that people use when they are here and they do not qualify to get a driver's license is that they use their passport from their country. They'll go to I know this because I have accompanied many undocumented folks to the consulate. We have an office, a consular office for Guatemala in Lake Worth Beach, as well as we have all of their offices for the consulates in Miami-Dade. And a person who is here, for example, from Honduras, they can go and they can re-up their passport from the Honduras. It is an official passport from the country of Honduras. And the country of Honduras knows where their citizen is because they keep track of them. And I think that is a good thing because it requires them to go back and re-register with their country of origin. I think that's a good thing. To have, and I look at the Legal Aid Society, Robert Burdich, I love these guys, I've been with them for years. I think they do a good thing. However, I'm a little concerned about a Legal Aid Society processing quote, legal ID cards for folks who may not qualify for one within our division of driver's licenses. I would rather do it the right way, which is go to your country of origin's consulate, re-up with them, say, I'm still here in Palm Beach or Lake Worth or West Palm, wherever it is in the county. Here's my address, and I'm still here. And they reissue them visas or they re-up their passport. If a person is stopped by a law enforcement officer, they do not have a driver's license, they do not have a legal ID card, they show their ID, their passport, and they are issued a notice to appear at court. I know this because I'm at court representing a person who does not have the legal ID from the state of Florida, but they have their passport from the country of origin. My concern is not $75,000. My concern is that I don't want undocumented folks to think that that this is a legal ID. A legal ID for the state of Florida is issued by a constitutional officer pursuant to Florida statute. It is not a Costco card with your picture on it. It is not a $20 ID card that you can get from legal aid. It is either a passport from the country of origin, which passes for law enforcement as a legal ID. So my concern is twofold. One, that we will be funding a private entity, as good as it is, it could be a church or it could be a legal aid society, to issue an ID card that people will think is a legal ID card in the state of Florida. I have yet to hear someone tell me that that is a legal ID card accepted by law enforcement or by a bank or by, I think those are the two. Hospitals will take whoever, there's no question. But I would like to ask our county lawyers if in fact a ID card issued by a private entity where somebody pays 20 bucks for would be considered to be a legal ID card, and then therefore that person could be subject to arrest or would not be mandated or required to go back to their consulate of their country of origin. Otherwise, I go to Costco and you can get an ID, So I am concerned about that.
Commissioner Sachs, can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course.
And I'll preface this by saying there was really no notice to the board that this issue was going to be brought up, and if it fails on a 3-3 vote, which I'm just predicting it may, someone would have to be.
I gave staff direction that this item be brought back to us for consideration.
That's where I'm
So yes,
going
you
with
had
this.
advance notice that it was coming.
What
I
I'm
agree.
asking is, would you
Yes.
mind tabling this conversation or making a motion to postpone it until we have a full complement of commissioners and we can be fully informed on this very important issue at hand?
Absolutely, and I'd like to see somebody from the state, either from Ann Gannon's office to respond to this, because, or law enforcement, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Very good. Commissioner Weiss, you recognize.
Yeah, I
you
just
with
want
the
to,
Vice Mayor.
clarify. Nobody is saying this is a legal state of Florida ID, nor is it purported to be a state of Florida legal ID. And when these IDs have been issued for a number of years now in Palm Beach County, but they have been funded by some of our municipalities and by donors. The request came in to ask the county, the Board of County Commissioners, to also make a contribution to help fund this program. And I'm hopeful maybe some other folks will come in and can speak about it, but I can tell you they have been utilizing them, and they're not told that these are legal IDs, but they are issued as IDs for these individuals. They can go into the city of West Palm Beach with that ID and they can get their utilities turned on so that they have water coming into their homes. And the same is for Lake Worth Beach, the same is for Riviera Beach. I can't speak for Delray and Boca Raton, but I also believe they're accepted in Green Acres and a number of our municipalities in helping people get connected to utilities. So it's not a panacea, but these folks, we have people here that are working and living in our community, and we've created barriers, maybe, for good reason, but we also need to help people on how they navigate through these barriers, and they're valuable parts of our community, and I look forward to having a full and robust discussion when we bring this back.
Very good. The county attorney is recognized, and then we'll get to Vice Mayor Weinroth.
I just wanted to point out, no, they're not quote-unquote legal IDs. What they are is the equivalent of a Costco card. However, there are agreements with various communities and various police agencies that they will be recognized. So if the city of West Palm Beach has agreed to recognize this, then they can use the card to get the utilities, or perhaps the city of West Palm Beach Police Department would issue a notice to appear instead of actually taking them in custody because of the ID.
And perhaps, there's no motion on the table now, but perhaps we want a motion to set this for a specific date to adjudicate so that we can have people come in and we can have a robust conversation about it, but I don't think today's that day. Vice Mayor Weinroth, you're recognized, and then we'll get to Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. I cannot support the community ID. I think that it's well-intentioned, but it is fraught with potential for fraud. To hear someone say that this is going to be used to open a bank account immediately sets off alarm bells in my head. That's not what it's supposed to be used for. And in fact, if you talk to legal aid, they say it's not to be used to set up a bank account. It's not to be used to walk onto an airplane. It's not real ID. Now, if this is going to help people, that's great. If legal aid can find a private funding source and they want to continue this program, that is all well and good. But I cannot support public funding for this. And I really think that, again, it is, I've heard from Peace, I've heard from legal aid, I understand it's well-intentioned, but it is fraught with too much potential for misuse, either by people who don't understand what it is and believe it is a state-issued ID, or by people who are going to be improperly vetted and then have an identification that is not them. So I have no problem with legal aid having this program, but I have a tremendous problem with state-issued or county funding going towards this. It's only $75,000. It's a pittance in what we're talking about here in a $1 billion budget, but this is not something that I can support. I want to thank the county administrator for sharpening her pencil and bringing this budget before us, and I will certainly support your newest proposal to take this money from ARPA and to balance this budget and be able to give the SOE the money they need, give the sheriff the money he needs, and be able to keep our county running efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Weinroth, Commissioner Marino, and then Commissioner McKinley.
Thank you. We've all been approached by the organization Peace in reference to this ID. We've all spoken to legal aid. What we haven't talked about is the fact that Rick Bradshaw, our sheriff, they do not recognize this ID as anything that you could use to drive a vehicle. So if you are in fact driving a vehicle without an ID, you're driving a vehicle unlicensed, so that's already illegal, for one. And since these are not accepted by the sheriff's office, the problem is a lot of instances, then these folks are then taken to jail because they have no ID. An ID that is given to them by legal aid is not going to keep anybody out of jail. I know that Sheriff Bradshaw had said to Peace that he was going to try to see if there were any practices around the country of IDs of similar cases and has not been able to find any yet. So that's one reason why I would not support this. The other reason is, yes, this is only $75,000 in reference to our budget. It's $75,000 this year. This is actually to pay for a staff person to do this program. So when I was on the phone with the Peace folks, I said to them, listen, you are all God-fearing folks. That's why you're here. Your churches, I don't see why each of you can't go to your church and say, let us have $1,000 towards this program. That was not accepted as a suggestion. I also said, you know what? The sheriff would be in favor of having, as it is now, the consular ID program, and maybe doing something to actually get some of these folks down to the consulates. I believe the only consulate that's not in Miami is the Cuban consulate. Is there a Cuban consulate in Miami? I don't think so.
You're recognized, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Relevant.
There's a Guatemala consulate, and there's a number of them, not a consulate, the consulates are in Miami, but there are consular offices where people can get their passports with their current residences updated on if they come.
But as
from
for
the-
getting consular ID, you would have to go to the consulate to do that.
In Miami, right.
Correct. So there are only I think that Cuba is the only one that doesn't have a consulate in Miami. And I had suggested also to Peace that maybe you should be trying to find a program to bring these folks down to Miami to get valid ID. That was also not an acceptable answer for them. So like Commissioner Weinroth, I'm not in support of this program until the Sheriff's Office, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the Justice Commission is also not in favor of this. So, and I may be speaking out of turn, so we'll figure that out beforehand, before we make any other decisions. But if this is not recognized by our Sheriff's Department, I don't see why we would be funding a program like this. Thank you.
All right, but you're good with the rest of the budget?
I'm good with the rest of the budget.
Lisa millage rate? All right, Commissioner McKinley.
Thank you. Let me just say that the Palm Beach County Justice Association isn't just some fly-by-night organization. It's the local chapter of the Florida Justice Association. So a tremendously well-respected group of trial attorneys. And so I appreciate their letter and their advocacy on behalf of this issue. We keep focusing on the undocumented. It's also the homeless, the formerly incarcerated, and the elderly. And I can tell you when I worked for Senator Nelson, I was under my married name because I was going through a divorce. And when I came over to work for the county is when I took my legal papers from the court system and changed my name to come and work for Palm Beach County, and had to bring all of that to when I went to the employee's office there to get my county ID. My driver's license had expired like 2 days later, and so then I had to go to the driver's license bureau and try to get my updated driver's license, and of course it was real ID. And then I had to go to the courthouse and I had to get copies of my divorce settlement that showed my name had legally changed, and get all of that together, then go back to the driver's license bureau, get a driver's license, and then come back to the county building to get my county ID by a certain deadline or my job offer expired. I want you to imagine that that's a woman who has fled a domestic violence situation and needs an immediate ID while she works out getting all of that paperwork. She may have to track down the Bureau of Vital Statistics in the state she was born to get a copy of her birth certificate in order to get that documentation. I mean, this isn't just an undocumented worker problem. And it's a $75,000 grant to the Legal Aid Society to continue the services that they are already providing. And it has never been authorized as a driver's license. I had that same issue, and I got into quite a heated conversation with the members of Peace a few years ago on that issue alone. But this is just a community ID program. You've got to show a photo ID to buy Sudafed. So, to get a library card, to enroll your child in school. And guess what? Federal law prohibits us from discriminating based on residency status to enroll a child in school. So it is up to the accepting agency on whether or not they want to accept this community ID. And a few law enforcement agencies, at the direction of their mayor, have decided to accept it as an acceptable form of photo ID. That's all this is just a photo ID. And so a $75,000 grant, I certainly don't support funding it in the long run, and would hope that Legal Aid Society, as Commissioner Sachs recommended, or Commissioner Marino, could figure out a way to privately fund this through their fundraisers. But, all of our nonprofits are strapped this year because of COVID and haven't been able to do their traditional fundraising. So this is just a carryover to help them continue the program that they're already providing. Thank you.
All right, well, there certainly wasn't direction to fund it, but that doesn't preclude this issue from being adjudicated formally at a later date. That concludes, I believe, debate on the budget. There is no public comment, so as it relates to 6H2, are there any motions? Oh.
Mayor, I'm going to move the
stand by.
millage rate.
Flow chart, did you want to speak, sir? All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Already laid out.
So if I understand correctly, what you're voting on is what the administrator presented to you, no?
No, we're voting on the
Yes, ma'am.
maximum millage rate, sir. That's it. We will adjudicate the budget itself in upcoming hearings starting in September. Is that fair? So today, we're setting the maximum millage rate, and it cannot go up from there, but it can go down.
And that's based upon the budget with the cuts that she presented to you.
No.
You're recognized,
Just
Madam
an up- it's
Administrator.
just a cap.
I would like directions because I have to prepare the public hearing documents in the budget. And so what I thought I heard was that you were going to support us utilizing the 46.4 million of ARPA funds to help balance the budget without the cuts that were being proposed.
Sure, we're not voting on that today.
No, you're not,
But
but
I
it-
think that is a
that's-
consensus among the board, absolutely. As it sits today, we're happy with the budget,
Okay.
the way that utilized
And I
our
will
funds.
bring it back with that 46.4 million, a part of my budget to balance.
I apologize for the confusion on that. Commissioner
no,
McKinley,
no
you're
problem.
recognized.
No, I was just going to clarify that staff direction. So the July 13th budget presentation scenario is the one we're giving you direction to move forward on. And
With
you
the
will-
ARPA funds in it.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that the community ID program just be a regular agenda item for conversation.
I will bring that back to this board, unless there's objection, at the August 17th meeting, so that we have plenty of time to adjust the budget based on the board's direction at that time.
Commissioner Sacks.
That's an excellent idea. I just want to make sure that we invite somebody from the sheriff's office, somebody from legal aid. I have not heard from legal aid in this. I've just heard from the peace movement. They could come, but I think we need to find out exactly what is an established ID for the state of Florida for those items. And I'm really now confused. I don't know if it's for banks or for but for those items that this peace movement wants us to fund. So somebody from law enforcement and somebody from the peace group and somebody from, Burdish from Legal Aid Society would be wonderful, so that we understand exactly what it is that we are supporting. Thank you, Madam.
All right, very good. Dwight, did you want to utilize your 3 minutes for any other purpose, sir? All right. Did I miss anyone in public comment? Motions are in order.
Mayor, I'm going to move 6H2A, B, C, and D, which includes a motion to authorize staff to submit a proposal not to exceed the millage rate for fiscal year 2022 to the property appraiser along the lines of what's been described by a county administrator, and also to set the hearing dates for the budget and other administrative adjustments.
Very good. The motion has been made by Vice Mayor Weinroth on 6H2A as published, B as published, C as published, and D as published. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Weiss. Is there further comment by members of the board? All in favor? All opposed? That item passes 6-0. Very good. Thank you, Madam Administrator, and to your staff. We will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene now as the Environmental Control Board on Agenda Item 7A1, Health Department, regarding the motion to approve the reappointment of 2 members to the EAB, Environmental Appeals Board, for a term of 3 years.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth on 7A1 as published, seconded by Commissioner Marino. There's no public comment or comments by member of the board. All in favor? All opposed? Those appointments pass 6-0. We adjourn now as the Environmental Control Board and convene as the Child Care Facilities Board on 8A1 regarding the recommended motion to approve the appointment of members to the Child Care Advisory Council as published.
Move to approve 8A1.
Motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth on 8A1, seconded by Commissioner Marino. All in favor? There's no public comment. All in favor? All opposed? 8A1 passes 6-0. We adjourn as the Child Care Facilities Board and reconvene as the board. Holding.
I have just a comment on item 8A1. It would be nice to get an update from the Child Care Advisory Council. One of the big reasons, one of the big holdbacks to women being able to get back to work right now is childcare, and I would love an update on the status of childcare in Palm Beach County.
Very good. All right, we've reconvened now as the Board of County Commissioners for 9A, which are board appointments. We'll start with District 1. Commissioner Marino.
Yes, please, I would like to appoint Alan Owens to the Palm Beach County Infrastructure Surtax Independent Citizen Oversight Committee. Oh, my God.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, second by Vice Mayor Weinroth to appoint Alan Owens to the Infrastructure Service Sales Tax Oversight Board. I can't say it any better. All in favor, all opposed, that item passes 6-0. Any further appointments? Commissioner Marino, no? District 2.
None, sir.
I do not have any. District 4, Vice Mayor Weinroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to reappoint Ronald Giddens to the Library Advisory Board and appoint Terrence Smolov to the Personnel Appeals Board.
All right. Motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth, second by Commissioner McKinley for 2 appointments. No further comments. All in favor, all opposed, that passes 6-0. Commission District 5, Commissioner Sachs. Do you have any appointments?
None.
Very good. Commissioner McKinley, District 6.
I have a few hundred.
Do you have any appointments to boards for the county commission?
No, sir.
All right. And, not aware of any requests by Commissioner Bernard to make any appointments, so we'll conclude 9A and move to 10A1, administration comments.
I think I've talked quite a bit today, so I'd like to ask the board to receive and file my board directive update, and then I will share with you, we recently lost Jerry Brownlee. Jerry Brownlee was our library's director before Doug. And Jerry was with us a very, very long time. He did a significant capital program for us that created the libraries that we have in our system today. And so he recently passed away, and I just wanted to recognize Jerry for all of the service that he provided to Palm Beach County. And we recognize the loss of our firefighter this morning. That is a member of our family that we lost, and so I'd like for all of us to keep him and his family in prayer. And the last one is John Howard, Sr. Mr. Howard was the former president of Palm Beach Lakes Bank, which was the only black bank in Palm Beach County. And then he left there and joined and became the executive director for the Black Business Investment Corporation in 1987. He retired in 2018. He did a lot of work for our black businesses here in Palm Beach County. And so I'd just like to recognize him for those 31 years of service that he provided to businesses here in Palm Beach County. He not only worked with black businesses, but he also worked with all of our small businesses in Palm Beach County. And he left the BBIC in a very good position. Marlon White is now the executive director of that, and we have worked with them to grow that particular effort, and we now have a second arm that also works with all other minority and small businesses where we're able to work and loan monies out. Is the CDFI for Palm Beach County now. So Mr. Howard did a lot for our community when it comes to small businesses. So just wanted
Thank
to
you, Madam
recognize
Administrator, for those recognitions and also
Move to
for
receive
your,
and file.
also for your excellent work today on the budget and other items. There's a motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth to receive and file the Administrator's report, seconded by Commissioner Sachs. All in favor, all opposed, that passes 6-0. We'll move now to the County Attorney, 610B. None. Very good. We'll go to Commissioner comments, agenda item 11. We'll start with Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. It's been a busy day, and I just want to say a shout out to our staff for their patience working with me with the budget. The main thing that I hear from our constituents is how are we going to toe the line on our budget, and what are we going to do about the losses that were incurred? And I do want to just say I see that we're using some of our funds for the shortfall this year. I hope that's not something we have to do in the future, because that was one of the discussions we had last month was, if we took $40 million a year for shortfall for the next 5 years, that's not going to happen. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of that. And I know that you, Ms. Baker and I have been talking about the millage rate in the future and the chance that it may be not this year, hopefully not next year, hopefully not the year later, but depending on what happens with gas tax dollars, we're going to have challenges in the future on other revenues that we get in. So our transportation and infrastructure revenues are going to change in the future, and we're going to have to figure out a way to offset those losses. So just a thinking cap for those. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. District 2, Commissioner Weiss, comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be brief today. I do also want to thank staff for excellent work today, and I think we accomplished a lot on behalf of the people of Palm Beach County. I would like to request maybe at an upcoming meeting, as you know, I served on the National Broadband Task Force, and at our NACO conference over the weekend, we prepared and released our Broadband Task Force report. This was done it's a nationwide involvement, and it's quite comprehensive. But I'd like to share it with you all and go over the major points that we found, and I think you'll see some really excellent work done by folks from across the country. A shout out to Terry Burrows, Commissioner Burrows, who is now going to be the second vice chair of the Florida Association of Counties, for his excellent work and leadership on the committee, and really speaking on behalf of our rural counties not in Palm Beach County, but in the state of Florida. But the other point I make is that, attending a conference and being able to interact with folks from around the country and hear their best practices and hear what other people are doing to solve their problems is something that we can bring back and share with our community to make us, although I know we're the best county in the United States, but sometimes other people do come up with some really good innovative ideas and interesting ways in order to make our places a better community. So I look forward to sharing some of those things with you as well.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Weiss, and we look forward to receiving that report. We'll go now to Commissioner Sachs, District 5, for comments.
Skipping around here a little bit. I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues. I think everybody here comes from different places, and we all add what we have done well in our lives. And I think that we are faced with another crisis after COVID. We didn't have a lot of time to rest after. I think the biggest issues and crisis of COVID are almost over. And now we're faced with issues of resiliency and structural fortifications of our buildings, and so many issues that are coming up. And I just want to thank all of you for coming from so many different areas and bringing so many good ideas to the table. And hopefully we will continue to work like this in the future. So I'm really proud to be part of this body. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Commissioner McKinley, District 6.
Thank you. 2 items you voted on while I was on a plane this morning, and I just wanted to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Vice Mayor Weinroth for item 3A1 and making sure that we had a resolution on the definition of anti-Semitism. and accepting that definition into our records. And also on item 6C4, which were the revisions that the Business Development Board was looking for to encourage all types of economic development in all areas of Palm Beach County. So I wholeheartedly support those. If I'd been here, I would have voted in the affirmative on both of those items, but thank you for moving those forward. I'm paying attention a little bit to what's going down just south of us, 90 miles south of Key West and Cuba, and our friends in Miami and what they're saying down there, and Senator Rubio, his warnings that we could be dealing with a massive migration from Cuba of immigrants seeking shelter here in the United States. And so just ask that we continue to monitor that and see what happens, and pray for the island of Cuba right now and their protesters. On NACO, on the National Association of Counties, it's an honor to serve on the board of directors of that association, along with my counterpart Doug Smith from Martin County. But Commissioner Weiss is being very humble. He got appointed yesterday to not one, not two, but 3 vice chair positions. 2 of them related because one to broadband and one to information technology because of his background. He's very well respected and regarded in that area of policy. But the other one that he was appointed to was the Resilient Counties, recognizing his work in that realm too. So congratulations to you. That's a huge honor. And then to the 20 different recipients in Palm Beach County receiving the Excellence Awards. And I don't have the list in front of me, it's packed in a suitcase somewhere, of all of the award-winning programs that our county was recognized for. So to all the staff members who submitted one of those applications, and to all of the employees that made those programs happen, congratulations, Ms. Baker, to each and every one of them. And I was excited. I was sitting next to Broward County at the awards luncheon, and we got 2 more awards than they did. So it's nice to beat our neighbors. Not quite up there with LA County, but we'll get there someday. The conference was wonderful. We did have an opportunity to interact, and I know Commissioner Weinroth was there, Commissioner Bernard was also there, and along with Commissioner Weiss, and I believe you participated virtually for some of those sessions. But to have the opportunity to be addressed by the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, by the Secretary of Transportation, by the Vice President of the United States, and the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader in the United States Senate, along with the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for the White House, and so many other Homeland Security, top level people, hear what's going on in our country firsthand. You can't beat that access. And so thank you, Ms. Baker, for sending so many of your team members. You know, with just 4 of us there in person, it's hard to make sure everything is covered, and your team members picked up where we weren't able to. We also successfully passed into the NACO platform, and what that means is that the NACO team of lobbyists can now advocate on these issues. We renewed the issue on sober homes, and we were also able to put into the platform what the Solid Waste Authority was seeking in terms of waste to energy programs. So very successful trip for Palm Beach County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. We'll go now to Vice Mayor Weinroth in District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. And on your behalf, I'm going to move for 3 requested off-site proclamations. One declaring July 18th through the 24th as Pretrial Service Supervision Week in Palm Beach County. One for proclamation declaring July 2021 as Park and Recreation Month in Palm Beach County. And the third, a proclamation recognizing the 20-year anniversary of the Quantum House in Palm Beach County.
Very good, thank you. All in favor? All opposed? That item passes 6-0. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Weinroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to make a few comments. First, we made the decision to give our mayor a do-over because of the pandemic, and so we put another year in. We should have done the same thing with FAC as far as the president of FAC. Our colleague here spent a year as the president of FAC, and last week we went to Orlando and watched her hand the gavel off to the new president, but she, to her credit, was able to hold the organization together, and as I understand it, most of the meetings had more attendees than they've had in the past, probably because it was easier to get to those meetings virtually. But certainly, you know, it was a challenge to be able to press forward, and congratulations on an able presidency. We all went to, or a bunch of us went to NACO last week, and as the commissioner said, it was really a very well done conference, even though I understand it was only about 3 months in the planning, when these usually take a couple of years to put together. And it was a beautiful property that they put the conference at, and we heard a lot of very, very informative speakers. And if nothing else, it was an opportunity just to reconnect with a lot of our fellow commissioners from throughout the country. When I was choking before, I wanted to mention that Sally Heyman, who is the District 4 Commissioner in Miami-Dade, Surfside, here I go again, Surfside is the, in her district, and she was really very appreciative of everything Palm Beach County has done to support them through this terrible crisis down there, and again, she wanted you to know that she appreciates everything that was done. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner McKinley, you're recognized.
Yeah, just wanted to brag a little bit. We left the association with a $250,000 budget surplus this year in a very tight year, but congratulations to Ms. Baker, who's now the president of the Florida County Managers Association. That also happened.
All right, well, that leaves...
Excuse me, Mayor Kerner. Hi, over here.
Yes, ma'am.
For your proclamations, you did not call the second, so I need a clarification on that.
Commissioner Weiss was the second.
Thank
and
you.
I do believe we did vote 6-0. Sorry about that. With regard to my comments, I don't have any. Thank you for a wonderful day of local government, and Board of County Commissioners is adjourned.
All right, full day.